Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna, and I will be your instructor today for Photoshop GIFs, and we welcome you to our virtual program. First, I'd like to remind you all to check your email for more details about the program. Your microphone has been muted by us, but if you want to ask us any questions or anything, go ahead and use the chat function. We do ask you to be respectful when making comments. I am actually already sharing my screen, so I hope that you can see it right now. And this instructional class is going to be recorded for future posterity. So you should get a link to your email saying when it's been uploaded to YouTube. So we are going to get started today with Photoshop GIFs. And I wanted to kind of go over the basics first, such as what is a GIF? I'm sure many of you are familiar with them, but GIFs are basically just image files, kind of like a JPEG or a PNG. But a GIF is specifically an image file that supports looping animation, and it's frequently found on the internet. These are typically funny or humorous in some way, and there's pretty much a GIF for every reaction. So today we're going to learn how to make some GIFs from scratch so that we can really personalize them. I think while it's fun to have GIFs of celebrities or cartoons, I think it's even more fun to have GIFs of your friends and family, people that you actually know. So today we are going to learn how to make them from scratch. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are actually going to download our exercise files because we have some exercise files for this class. So Caitlin, if you could drop that link into the chat. We've got two exercise files. We've got a video and a still image. And you should be able to download them all, or if you hover over one of them, you should have this download arrow down here. I'm going to go ahead and download them all, and you'll see down here, Google Drive is preparing to download. It's zipping the file, which means that it's compressing it, making it a little bit smaller and easier to download. And once the file has been zipped, we should be able to download it. Depending on your internet connection, this may take some time. We are going to be working with video files, and video files are typically quite big. One of the things that we'll be talking about a little bit later is file size, actually, where we want to compress our GIFs to be small and easy to download, easy to load, so it doesn't take forever to buffer on a website. And so that it's just a quick, easy, shows up in a flash. And this is taking much longer than I anticipated. It was faster when I practiced this, but as I mentioned, it all depends on your internet connection. While we're waiting for this download to go through, I want you to start thinking about what videos you can turn into GIFs. So I know a lot of us have like pictures of friends and family on our phones. Think about if you want like some text flashing across the screen, if you have a video of friends, if you want some text, or just to turn that video into a GIF itself. Because we are going to be using Photoshop, there's a lot of different effects that we can change, such as lighting. We can change the different styles. There's a lot of adjustment layers that you can add to Photoshop still images, and you can do that to GIFs as well. I'm going to try closing that and downloading again. There it goes. Okay, like I said, much faster normally. Okay, show in folder. When you download something, you usually get a download bar in Google Chrome, at least, that shows you where your download is. And I just clicked that up arrow and said show in folder, because the next thing we want to do, now that we have actually downloaded our zip folder, we need to extract the files. So once the zip file is in the downloads folder, we can right click it and then hit this extract all button. It's going to ask us to select a destination. I like just going with the default. But there's my video and there's my still image. So I'm going to open Photoshop again, and I'm going to go to File and Open. And inside this file folder, I'm going to open this image of a pumpkin. Now, before we get started with this, I do want to mention that there's many different ways to create a GIF in Photoshop, and we are going to cover two different ways. First, we're going to work with this image of a pumpkin, and we're going to create a frame animation, which means working from a still picture and creating slight differences on copies of that picture so that they seamlessly blend together when combined one after another. So after we're done with this GIF, we are going to create a video timeline, which means working from a video, and we are going to use keyframes to animate some additional elements. And we will see the differences in these approaches. So now that I've got this open, I'm seeing that this is quite a high resolution image. I'm seeing down here it's 50%, so it can be zoomed in even further, which is great. But as I mentioned before, GIFs are animated, so they take up a lot of space on a computer. They are big files. So to make our file a little bit smaller, I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and I'm going to make sure that this link is checked because I want to keep the original proportions. And instead of 1920 pixels, we really don't need a GIF that large. Typically, GIFs are between 500 pixels wide to 800 pixels wide. So we're going to still make a pretty large GIF, but we're going to make it 800 pixels by 600 pixels instead. And because this is going on the web, a 72 resolution is perfect. We don't need anything higher than that. Typically, if you wanted to print something, you would do 300 pixels per inch, but because this is staying on the web, it's an animated GIF, we're keeping that at 72. Lastly, we're going to click OK. And our image is so much smaller. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'm going to use the scroll wheel on my mouse to move this a little bit. And you can see now I'm zoomed in 129%, which is much better than the 50% we were before. So after changing the image size, the next thing that I like to do is kind of plan my GIF. So for this GIF, I want to do two different things. I want to change the brightness so that it looks like the candle inside the pumpkin is flickering a little bit. And I think I also want to add some text. And maybe with that GIF, we make the text change color. So we are going to just work on this first frame first. And when we think about frames, we're thinking about different still images that are going to be flashing one after another after another. So right now we're just creating the first frame. And for this, I want to make sure that I unlock my background. So I just clicked that lock icon and it unlocked it and created a layer 0 instead of a background layer. And I'm going to want to create a layer group because we're going to have a lot of elements per image. So I'm going to drag this layer into my layer group, and there it is. I'm going to add an adjustment layer. So here in the docs on the right-hand side, you'll see properties, but right next to properties, you'll see a tab for adjustments. And in my adjustments, I'm going to create a brightness and contrast layer. And for this, we can make our image brighter or we can make it darker and a little spookier. So for this one, I think that I'm just going to keep it at 0. But for future frames, we're going to change the brightness up a little bit so that it looks like that candle is flickering. Finally, I want to add some text. So in the toolbar on the left-hand side, and let's actually make the toolbar a little bit wider. You'll see this T. It's the horizontal type tool. And we can click down here on the bottom. I know it's still a while away, but I'm going to write Happy Halloween. Bottom. You can see that Photoshop automatically has some guides. When I tried to center it, this pink line showed up, and it's still showing up as I'm clicking down on the text. If I were to let that go, that would be fine. If you're having trouble getting that pink line to show up, what you can do is you can use the move tool. And here we've got some align options. And what we want to do is we want to align not to the selection, but align to the canvas. And this allows us to select our type tool and select this align center, and it automatically makes the text centered. So now that we've got our text on there, what I want to do is I want to duplicate my group. As I mentioned before, we are going to be making multiple frames. So we're creating all of these different frames now, and then we'll create a frame animation in just a little bit. So I'm going to right click on my group, and I'm going to select duplicate group from the options that show up. And instead of group 1 copy, I'm going to call it group 2. And here we have our text again, and we've got our brightness contrast layer. You can see when I click on the brightness contrast layer, the brightness and contrast shows up again. So this time I'm going to make the pumpkin a little bit brighter, I think. And depending on what effect we wanted, we could make the text appear to flicker as well. So instead of 100%, I think that I'm going to make the text about 75%. And this just makes the text a little bit darker so that it appears to flicker a bit more. Now that we're done with group 2, we are going to duplicate group again. Call it group 3 this time. And once again, we can adjust our brightness and contrast. So I'm going to really make our brightness super bright, maybe about 53, and make the Halloween maybe a little bit brighter too, 88% or so. And now that that's done, I'm going to right click and duplicate group again as group 4. And this time the text opacity is going to lower down to 62%, and my brightness contrast layer is going to lower to maybe negative 28%. And you can just go with whatever numbers work for you. I don't have anything specific in mind. I just know that I want the brightness and contrast to alter a little bit throughout the frames. So we have 4 different group layers. And now that we've got all of our frames ready, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and go to Window up top in the top toolbar. And I want to make sure that timeline is selected. And here in timeline, you should see an option called Create Frame Animation. You might see Create Video Timeline instead, depending. Just make sure that you click on this drop down and select Create Frame Animation. And once we do that, Photoshop likes moving things on me. Give me 1 second. Okay. So you'll see that we have a timeline now, and we have a grand total of 1 frame. And that's not necessarily what I was going for. I was going for multiple frames. And what we can do now is we can create this little plus icon down here, and we can create more frames. So now that I have the second frame selected, what I can do is I can toggle the visibility in my layers and make group 3 the primary visible one. So I've got group 4 on top right now, and now group 3 is the top visible layer. And then I'm going to create another frame, and I'm going to make group 2 the top selected frame. And I'm going to create one last one and create group 1 to be my top selected frame. So we've got this little bit of flickering going on here. And what we can do is now we can go ahead and drag these in whatever order we want. So I think that I want it to be super bright, then the darkest that we have it, then kind of regular, and then a little darker again. So you'll see in the timeline, we've got some options. The first one that I wanted to point out is this once, 3 times, forever. And we want to make sure that forever is checked. This determines how many times your GIF will loop. So it can just loop once, or it can loop 3 times, or it can loop forever. And most GIFs loop forever. They don't just loop a certain number of times. We've also got these buttons down here, which allow us to play animation. So going back to frame 1, I'm going to hit play, and I wanted to make sure that everybody's okay with a little bit of flickering, a little bit of a strobe effect, because that's what we're going to be seeing in just a moment. So I'm going to click play. Okay, that seemed to flicker really, really well in my opinion. But we can make it a little bit slower. Right now, you can see below these little thumbnails, we've got 0 seconds, 0 seconds, 0 seconds, 0 seconds. What this means is that there's no delay from frame to frame. It just goes one frame after another, really fast. What we can do is we can make sure that there's 0.1 second in between each. So we can manually click on each one and make sure that it's 0.1 seconds. And now when we play, it's a little bit slower, a little bit friendlier, not as intense, I would say. And I think that's how I'm going to want to keep mine. Of course, if you prefer a faster effect, you can definitely go for that. Just make sure to hit no delay on your frame animation. Now that that's done, we are essentially done with our frame animation. We just want to make sure that we export it. We can, of course, save this as a Photoshop file, and it will save all of our layers, and it will save all of our adjustments that we've made, so we can continue to edit. So instead of saying Happy Halloween, we might say boo, or spooky season or something. We can definitely change that text. But if we want to go ahead and share this with our friends and family, what we'll want to do is we'll want to hit export, and we're going to save for web legacy. You'll get this new dialog box that shows up. And inside this dialog box, you'll want to make sure that GIF is selected. You'll see that there's also options for JPEG, PNG, WMP, but we want GIF because we want to save that frame animation. Pretty much all of the presets are good. You want to make sure that the colors, typically as many colors as are possible, are allowed. That's how many you want. So 256 is great. That will mean a bigger file size, of course, but in this case, I think colors are definitely worth keeping. We don't need transparency. Here you can see we can change the image size again. And here we've also got our looping options, and we want to make sure that our looping options are set to forever. So then we're going to click save. And it's going to ask us where we want to save. I'm going to save into pictures. And I'm going to type in pumpkin Halloween. Okay, save. So now when we open up our files and we go to pictures, we should be able to open this with a browser, such as Internet Explorer. And you can see our GIF is forever flickering and forever spooky, which is just what we wanted. So that's basically how you create a GIF from text or from a single still image with some added text on there. However, a lot of times we might want to create GIFs from video. So to do that, you should have your video file saved already. And I'm going to click open, and I'm going to see this Photoshop GIFs cat video. And you'll see this time Photoshop automatically opened the timeline with it. Photoshop knows that it's a video file, so it's pretty good about making sure that the right thing opens with it. Once again, we are going to go to image and image size, and we're going to make this so much smaller. Transforming a video layer requires converting it to a smart object layer. So that's a normal alert that pops up. You're just going to want to go ahead and click convert. It still maintains all of your timing. You know, it just makes it so that the image, the video file can be resized. So one thing that I mentioned before about file sizes is the actual dimensions of a file. When it comes to video files, though, you also want to make sure that your GIFs are fairly short. I would not create a GIF longer than 5 seconds, typically, unless there's a really, really good reason to do so. So you can see that our clip is about 15 seconds long, and what we can do, I'm going to zoom in on our timeline to make our video file a little bit bigger. Yeah, you can see it's just over 14 seconds long, and that's quite long for a GIF. We don't want our GIF to be that long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pan around a little bit and see where this cat is looking. A lot of times this cat is looking up, but there's a moment where he looks to the side and then back, and I want to make sure that that's in our final video. So you want to make sure that you capture whatever moment you want in your video, and you want to make sure that it's still there at the end. So I think that's where we'll want to end our video. And I'm going to click and drag the end. I'm going to click and drag it all the way to this red playhead right here. And you can see now the video is 6 seconds long, but I also don't think that it needs to be that long. I'm going to go to maybe about there. And I'm going to click and drag the beginning of my video to the red playhead. And now our video is much smaller in size and dimension. And our video is also much shorter. So that's going to keep our file size down as well. So if we wanted to, we could, of course, just click File and Export, save for Lab Legacy, and call this done. But there's a lot of really, really cool effects that you can do with video timelines in Photoshop, and I wanted to explore some of those with you. Right now, you can see in our layers panel, we've got one video group, and what we want to do is we want to create a new group. And in this group, we want some text. I am going to type boo. And I want it to look like the cat is following with its eyes this boo, wherever it is on the GIF. So in order to do that, you'll see in our timeline, just as we have the two different video group layers, we also have two layers, so to speak, in our timeline. There's video group 1, and if we click on video group 1, we can see that we can transform, do something with the opacity, play around with the style a little bit. We don't want to do that for the video itself, but for group 1, we do. And we first thing want to make sure that our boo is on top of the cat. Okay. So now that the layers are aligned and the videos of the boo text and the cat are the same length and they are on top of each other, I'm going to play around with this boo. And you can see we have some of the same options. We've got transform, opacity, style, but we also have text wrap. Now, we're not going to play around with text wrap in this case, but we are going to play around with some of the transform and opacity tools. So first thing we want to do, we want to make sure that our playhead is all the way at 0. And we are going to move this boo over to where the cat is looking at it. I think maybe around there. That looks pretty good to me. And what we want to do, we want the boo to move around as the cat is looking at it. So we are going to click on this little stopwatch by transform. Transform also doesn't just control how big the text is, but it also controls where the text is moving. So by clicking on transform and creating a keyframe here, we say we want you to start here and then move at a different keyframe to another spot. So I'm going to kind of buffer this a little bit. And I'm trying to take a good look at this cat's eyes. And it looks like the cat's head is moving down just a smidge over to the left a little. Okay. Okay, right there, I think is where the cat's head starts to change. So we can create a new keyframe right here. And maybe the boo moved closer to the cat during this time. And then the cat's head turns quickly to its left, my right. So I'm going to create a new keyframe there. And the boo is going to move over here to the right side of the screen, right where the cat is looking. And then it moves back pretty quickly. I'm going to create another keyframe and move the boo back over to its head, over its head rather. Okay, I think during this keyframe, I actually want the boo to be a little bit higher because it looks like the cat's head down. Okay, so I'm going to delete that keyframe. It moves down and then moves back up. So at the end of the animation, I want to create another keyframe and the text goes back up. So now let's see how that looks. Okay, I'm not sure that I'm... Okay, I like this, but I don't think that I like how it just moves straight up in the end. I think I want it to move a little bit more this way. Okay, let's try and see how that buffers again. Of course, you can play around as much as you want to make sure that the cat is really following this boo with its eyes as much as it can. But we also want to play around with some other aspects. So I'm going to call this good enough, and we are going to see what else we can do to this boo. We can play around with the opacity. So I think in the beginning, I want the opacity of this text to kind of slowly fade in. So I think that I want to start with 0 opacity actually, and maybe around this point. I'm going to create another keyframe. I'm going to make the opacity 100%. So let's see how that looks. Wonderful. One last thing that I want to do really is I want to slowly fade the opacity from here to the end so that it disappears again. So starting again from the beginning. Wonderful. That's essentially exactly what I wanted. I think that I could get the cat's eyes to follow that boo a little bit closer. Caitlin, do we have any questions at this time?
We do not. You're doing great.
Thank you. Wonderful. So at this point, once we consider ourselves done with the video timeline GIF, we could, of course, play around more with the style as well. If you want, you could play around with the effects, give the text a drop shadow to make it really stand out. Maybe make that drop shadow a little bit bigger. Okay. And not only could you give it a drop shadow, but you can make that drop shadow change. I've seen some really cool animations where the drop shadow starts at one angle and then it kind of skews to another angle. And it looks like there's a flashlight or something on the text and it's moving the shadow from one side to another. So if you selected style and you actually created a keyframe animation from that, you'd be able to go back into your effects, your drop shadow, and change the angle from 30 to 270, I believe. And it kind of shows that shadow moving from one side to another. It's not nearly as cool on a moving block of text like we have right now. If it's just stationary text, though, I would highly recommend that effect. Well, if there are no further questions, I think that brings us to the end of our class today. Before you leave, I did want to mention this is Photoshop, and as you know, Photoshop has a monthly fee to use it. However, with your Plano Public Library card, you can use Photoshop on our computers for free. Each of our libraries, we have an Adobe Creative Cloud station, and on that station, you'll find Photoshop, you'll find Illustrator, InDesign, Premiere, Audition, a bunch of others that I'm forgetting because there's a lot of applications in the Adobe Creative Cloud. But you should be able to fulfill pretty much all of your digital creativity needs on those computers. Also, at Parr Library and at Haggard Library, we have digital creation spaces. These are rooms with green screens and computers with the Adobe Creative Cloud on them as well. So if you would like to use those, just give either Parr Library or Haggard Library a call, and we should be able to set you up with an appointment to use the room. Last but not least, I did want to mention we have a lot of really exciting classes coming up. Our new Engage brochure is going to be coming out soon for September through December. And if you want to find more classes like that, you'll go to planolibrary.org. You'll get redirected to our plano.gov page, and you'll scroll down a little bit until you find this Engage brochure, and you'll hit that button, and that button will give you the most up-to-date information about all of our classes going on at the Plano Public Library. Caitlin, did you want to mention any upcoming classes that I should mention?
I think you mentioned what's most important. Go online, make sure you check out our most up-to-date information through the Engage brochure, or if you have our app, you can see our daily offerings at all locations through the app, or that library interactive calendar purple block option. But if you are just trying to find out something for last few days of summer, we do still have our Thinking Money exhibit for kids at Haggard Library. We also have some business and career programs. We have one on Friday for job seekers. Anyone who's looking for a new job opportunity, we'll have staff there helping with job search opportunities. And we will, of course, have more Adobe related classes throughout fall, so check those out. Thanks, Anna.
Thank you. Do we have a question?
No, we do not.
Okay, just double checking.
So we did have a question come in through the Q&A.
Okay.
And it's, where can we access a recording of this class? Can you show everyone the YouTube channel?
Absolutely. So if you go to planolibrary.org, you'll get redirected to this website, as I mentioned before. And if you scroll down, you'll see our YouTube channel. And our YouTube channel name specifically is Plano Public Library, all one word. And there you should be able to go to videos, and you can search for Photoshop GIF creation. I know that our live stream is happening right now, but that video should be up on the YouTube channel in just a few days.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you all so much for coming. And if you have a second at the end of this program, we do have a survey that we would love for you to fill out. It just helps us know what kind of classes we can offer for you in the future and what kind of classes you are interested in receiving. We want to do our best by you, and we'd really value your feedback. So if you could fill that survey out, we would really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.